The sun hung low over the small-town fairgrounds, casting long shadows across the colourful booths and the chatter of families gathered for the annual school fundraiser. Laughter mingled with the sizzle of burgers on grills, but beneath it all, a quiet tension simmered in the air, like the calm before a desert storm. 9-year-old Penny Hart stood alone by the raffle table, her small hands clutching a crumpled ticket, her wide eyes scanning the crowd with a mix of hope and heartache. She had lost sight of her mother in the throng just moments ago, and now, amid the strangers, a wave of fear gripped her tiny frame. Tears welled up, threatening to spill, as she whispered to herself, "Mommy, where are you?" That's when she saw it. The battered helmet resting on a nearby picnic table, its surface etched with scratches like old war wounds, glinting faintly in the fading light. It belonged to a man who had pulled up on a rumbling Harley earlier that afternoon, his presence drawing curious glances from the PTA moms and wide-eyed kids. Owen Gravel Knox, 53, and built like weathered oak, sat a few feet away, nursing a soda while his Iron Promise brothers milled about, helping with the heavy lifting for the event. He wasn't here for the fanfare. The club had a soft spot for community gigs like this, a way to give back without fanfare. But Penny's gaze locked on that helmet, and something inside her cracked open. She pointed a trembling finger at it, her voice cutting through the noise like a siren's call. "That's my guardian angel," she said, loud enough for heads to turn. "That's him." Owen froze, his calloused hand midway to his drink. The words hit him like gravel under tires, sharp, unexpected, grinding into the scars he carried from a life of roads and regrets. He looked up, meeting the girl's eyes, and in that instant, the fundraiser faded into a blur. Penny's face, pale and earnest, stirred a memory buried deep. Twisted metal on a rain-slicked highway 4 years back, the screech of brakes, the acrid smell of burning rubber. He had been riding alone that night, cutting through the storm toward a forgotten outpost, when the pileup unfolded like a nightmare. A family van had spun out, slamming into a semi, and in the chaos, he'd pulled over without a second thought. Yanking open the door, he'd shielded the mother and her infant from shattering glass, his leather jacket taking the brunt as he held them until sirens wailed in the distance. The little girl, barely 5 then, had clung to his arm, her cries muffled against his vest. "You'll be okay," he'd growled, voice rough from years of dust and silence. "I promise I'll check on you later." But he hadn't. The medics arrived, he vanished into the night, another shadow on the road, haunted by the weight of promises unkept. Claire Hart pushed through the crowd then, her face flushed from worry, spotting Penny just as the girl's declaration hung in the air. 34, and still carrying the faint lines of that night's terror around her eyes, Claire froze at the sight of the helmet. Her breath caught, a hand flying to her mouth. "Oh, God," she murmured, stepping closer, her gaze shifting from the scratches on the leather to the man beside it. Owen stood slowly, his 6-foot frame unfolding like a creaking gate, the Iron Promise patch on his back catching the light, a fist clenched around a glowing oath, the club's symbol of unbreakable bonds. Claire's eyes filled with tears, recognition dawning like a slow sunrise. "You," she said, voice breaking. "You're the one from the highway, the man who saved us." The words landed heavy, pulling Owen back to that rain-drenched wreck. He remembered the mother's desperate grip as he lifted her daughter free, the infant's wail piercing the downpour. He'd stayed until the ambulances lit up the scene, barking orders to keep the family calm, his own heart pounding with the adrenaline of a man who'd seen too many wrecks but never walked away from one he could touch. Then, as the lights flashed, he'd mounted his bike and ridden off, the promise slipping from his mind like oil on wet pavement. Life on the road demanded movement, and Iron Promise had called him to other battles, lost brothers, shadowed deals that tested the club's code of loyalty. But now Here in the heart of this ordinary afternoon, the past roared back, engine thundering loud. Penny tugged at her mother's skirt, pointing again. "He has the same helmet, Mommy. The one from the bad night. He made the monsters go away." Claire knelt, pulling her daughter close, but her eyes never left Owen. "We never got your name," she said softly, standing again, her voice laced with a gratitude that bordered on reverence. "I looked for you. Posters, news clips, anything. You disappeared like a ghost, but you kept us alive that night. My husband, he didn't make it, but you gave us a chance." Owen's jaw tightened, the weight of her words pressing like the desert sun on cracked earth. He wasn't a hero. He was gravel, the club's enforcer with a ledger of failures longer than his scars. The iron promise brotherhood had pulled him from the abyss after his own losses, a war buddy gone too soon, a family fractured by the roads he chose. They taught him that promises weren't just words. They were the chains that held men together when the world tried to tear them apart. Yet here he was, face to face with one he'd let rust. "I said I'd check back," he rumbled, his voice gravel low, eyes dropping to the helmet. "Meant to, got caught up in club business. Never right to leave loose ends." Around them, the fundraiser hummed on, kids shrieking on the bounce house, the distant growl of a generator, but a small circle formed, iron promise riders pausing their tasks, sensing the shift. Jax, Owen's road captain, a broad-shouldered vet with tattoos mapping old wounds, clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Sounds like unfinished road, brother," he said quietly, his tone carrying the club's unspoken vow. "Stand for your own blood or chosen." Claire wiped her eyes, a tentative smile breaking through. "It's not too late. Penny's been drawing angels with helmets ever since. Come to dinner tonight. Let us thank you properly." Owen hesitated, the invitation pulling at threads long frayed. In the club's world of moral grey, this felt like a beacon, a chance to honour not just a rescue, but the man he'd buried under layers of silence. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of rust and gold, Owen nodded, the helmet now more than scarred metal. It was a marker, a call to stay put for once. Little did he know, this reconnection would drag the shadows of that highway crash into the light, testing Iron Promise's bonds against corruption that had lingered unsolved. A trucking company cutting corners, a cover-up that left families shattered. But in that moment, with Penny's small hand slipping into his, Owen felt the first crack in his armoured heart, the promise reborn not in thunder but in quiet resolve. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The evening sun bled into twilight as Owen followed Claire's old sedan through the winding streets of Elmwood, the town's edges blurring into fields of goldenrod, swaying under a cooling breeze. His Harley rumbled low behind her, the engine's steady pulse a counterpoint to the knot tightening in his chest. Penny sat in the back seat, twisting to wave at him every few turns, her smile a beacon that pierced the gathering dusk. Jax and a couple of Iron Promise brothers trailed at a distance, their bikes a silent escort, not intrusive but there, a reminder that the club watched its own. Owen gripped the handlebars tighter, the leather worn smooth from years of holding on through storms, both literal and otherwise. Dinner. It sounded simple, almost domestic, but it felt like stepping off a cliff into uncharted territory. Claire's home was a modest, ranch-style house on the outskirts, its porch light flickering on like a hesitant welcome. White siding peeled in places from the relentless wind, and a swing creaked gently in the yard, evoking memories Owen had long buried, lazy afternoons with his own kin, before the roads claimed them one by one. He killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the chirp of crickets and the distant hum of neighbors' TVs. Removing his helmet, he ran a hand through salt and pepper hair, feeling exposed without the familiar weight on his head. The scratches on its surface caught the porch light, each one a testament to near misses, a bar fight in Reno, a skid on icy blacktop up north. Now they whispered of that highway night, when they'd shielded more than just his skull. Penny bounded out first, her sneakers kicking up dust as she raced to him. "You came. Mommy said you might not, 'cause angels gotta fly away." She grabbed his massive hand, her palm tiny and warm against his calluses, pulling him toward the door. Owen let her lead, his boots thudding heavily on the gravel path. Claire waited at the threshold, apron dusted with flour, her eyes still rimmed red from the afternoon's emotions. "Come in, please. It's nothing fancy. Spaghetti, the kid's favorite." She stepped aside, and the scent of garlic and simmering tomato sauce enveloped him, stirring a hunger he hadn't acknowledged in years of diner coffee and road rations. Inside, the house breathed life. Drawings pinned to the fridge, a half-finished puzzle on the coffee table, the faint echo of a baby's coo from a playpen in the corner. Claire's infant son, Tommy, gummed a teething ring, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around him. Owen hung his jacket by the door, the iron promise patch drawing Claire's glance, a subtle nod to the brotherhood that had become his anchor after his discharge from the service, after losing his brother to a roadside ambush overseas. They settled at the kitchen table, scarred oak that had seen better days, plates steaming before them. Penny chattered about school, her fork twirling noodles like a mini lasso, but Owen's focus drifted to Claire. She served him an extra scoop, her movements deliberate, as if feeding a guest could mend the fractures of the past. As the meal unfolded, the conversation edged toward the unavoidable. Claire set down her glass, the ice clinking softly. That night on the interstate, it was pouring so hard I could barely see the taillights ahead. My husband Mark, he was driving, trying to get us home from a family visit. The truck in front jackknifed, and everything just exploded. Her voice trailed, eyes distant, reliving the chaos. The van's wild spin, the crunch of metal folding like paper, shards of glass raining down. Owen nodded. Fork paused mid-air, the memory syncing with hers. He'd arrived seconds after the impact, his bike fishtailing to a stop amid the wreckage. The air had reeked of spilled fuel and fear, headlights cutting fog like knives. He'd wrenched open the van's door, his arms a barrier against the collapsing frame, lifting Penny free while Claire clutched Tommy to her chest. Mark had been pinned, his labored breaths the last sound Owen heard before the jaws of life arrived. "I stayed as long as I could," Owen said, his gravelly tone low like thunder rolling far off. "Barked at the responders to prioritize you three. Then I rode out. Club had a run waiting. Had to move." It was half-truth. The real pull had been his own ghosts, the fear that lingering would bind him to pains he couldn't fix. Claire leaned forward, her face softening. "You didn't just save us. You gave Mark a moment to say goodbye. He whispered to me, 'Take care of them.' Right before." She swallowed, the word unspoken hanging heavy. The official report called it an accident, wet roads, driver error. But Mark always said that trucking outfit was shady, overloading rigs to cut costs. We sued, but their lawyers buried it. No justice, just settlements that barely covered the hospital. Owen's fist clenched under the table, the club's code igniting in his veins. Iron Promise didn't traffic in vengeance, but they rooted out rot, corruption that preyed on the vulnerable, much like the shadows that had claimed his brother. Jax had mentioned whispers of that company, Apex Freight in club circles, rigged inspections, bribed officials, a trail of wrecks swept under the rug. "Might not be too late for answers," he murmured, meeting her gaze. Penny, sensing the shift, slid from her chair and climbed into his lap, tracing the tattoos peeking from his sleeve, faded ink of dog tags and a clenched fist. "You're staying this time, right? No more flying away?" The question pierced him, a child's unfiltered truth. Owen wrapped an arm around her. the weight both foreign and fitting. Outside, the brothers' bikes idled in the driveway, Jack's exchanging a knowing look through the window. This wasn't just a meal. It was a thread pulling Owen back, forcing him to confront the promise he'd let fade. As Claire cleared plates, her hand brushing his in passing, a spark of connection amid the domestic hum, Owen felt the stirrings of resolve. The helmet, left on the entry table, gleamed under the lamp, no longer a relic of isolation, but a call to action. Shadows from that crash lingered. An iron promise would ride them down, not for glory, but for the quiet honor of standing firm. Yet, as night deepened, a distant siren wailed, echoing the highway's ghosts. Unbeknownst to them, Apex's tendrils reached into Elmwood. A local cop on the payroll, files tucked away in a precinct drawer. Owen's return had lit a fuse, drawing unseen eyes. But in the warmth of that kitchen, with Penny's head nodding against his shoulder, he chose to stay, the first step toward mending what time had cracked. And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The kitchen light cast a warm glow over the remnants of dinner, steam curling from the last of the spaghetti like fading memories. Owen shifted in his chair, Penny's small form still nestled against him, her breaths evening out into the soft rhythm of near sleep. The weight of her trust pressed on him heavier than any saddlebag, a reminder that some loads weren't meant to be shrugged off at the next mile marker. Claire gathered the dishes with quiet efficiency, her movements a dance of normalcy amid the unspoken storm brewing in the air. Outside, the Iron Promise bikes stood sentinel in the driveway, their chrome edges catching moonlight like drawn blades. Jack stepped inside then, his boots scraping the threshold, a nod to Claire before he pulled up a chair. At 48, with a face mapped by desert winds and barroom negotiations, he was the club's steady hand, the one who mapped routes through moral quagmires. "Brought a pie from the fair," he said, setting a foil-wrapped bundle on the table, his voice a low rumble that cut the tension without shattering it. "Figured we could talk while we eat." His eyes met Owen's, a silent signal. The brothers had pieced together the story from the fundraiser whispers, and the club's code demanded they ride this out together. Claire sliced the pie, the knife gliding through crust with a crisp snap, passing plates around. Tommy fussed in his playpen, and she scooped him up, settling him on her hip as she sat. The infant's tiny fingers clutched her shirt, mirroring Penny's earlier grip on Owen, a cycle of protection that spanned generations. "Mark worked construction," Claire began, her voice steady now, pie untouched. "Long hours, but he loved the road trips home. That night, we were coming back from seeing his folks upstate. The rain hit like a wall, and that Apex truck. It swerved right into us. I heard the tires scream, felt the jolt." She paused, rocking Tommy gently, the motion instinctive, a shield against the replay in her mind. Owen leaned forward, the wooden chair creaking under his bulk. The pie's cinnamon scent mingled with the night's chill seeping through the screen door, grounding him. "Apex Freight," he echoed, the name stirring echoes from Club Intel, whispers of overloaded halls barreling through back roads, inspectors turning blind eyes for envelopes thick with cash. Iron Promise had crossed paths with their kind before, shadowy operators who treated lives like cargo to be discarded. Heard talk of them skirting rigs pushing limits, no manifests. "Your suit, did it turn up anything solid?" Claire's eyes darkened, the fork pausing in her hand. "Lawyers said it was all contributing factors, weather, speed. But Mark's brother worked a warehouse gig once. He saw them loading uneven tires bulging like overripe fruit. The company paid out just enough to quiet us, but no real probe. The cop who took the report, he was quick to close the file, said it was clean." She glanced at Penny, now fully dozing against Owen's chest, her cheeks smudged with sauce. I didn't push harder. Had to focus on her, on Tommy, but it eats at you, knowing truth got buried under paperwork. Jax wiped his mouth with a napkin, his tattooed forearm flexing, a faded eagle clutching an olive branch. The club's nod to peace earned through vigilance. "Sounds like rot runs deep," he said, voice measured. "We've tangled with outfits like that. Bribed badges, falsified logs. If there's a trail, Iron Promise can follow it. Discreet, like ghosts on the highway." He shot Owen a look, the weight of brotherhood unspoken. No man rides alone when honor's at stake. Owen felt the pull, the old promise from that rainy night resurfacing, no longer a loose thread, but a rope to haul himself upright. Penny stirred, murmuring in her sleep, "Angel stays." Owen's hand rested on her back, the gesture awkward at first, then instinctive. He'd lost his own shot at fatherhood years back, roads and regrets pulling him away from a woman who'd waited too long. The club had become his kin, forged in the fires of shared scars, veterans like him, piecing together lives from fragments. But this, holding a child's quiet faith, cracked something deep, a fissure letting light into the gravel of his soul. Claire watched them, her expression a mix of gratitude and guarded hope. "Why now? After all this time?" she asked softly, as if voicing the question freed it from the air. Owen met her gaze, the pie's sweetness turning bittersweet on his tongue. "That promise I made, checking back, making sure you were solid. Let it slip through my fingers like rain on leather. Club life's full of calls you answer, but this one's calling me back." He set the plate aside, the ceramic clink echoing his resolve. "We'll dig, quiet, for Mark, for you. No fanfare, just writing what's crooked." The conversation ebbed as the clock ticked past 9, the house settling into a hush, broken only by Tommy's contented sighs. Jax rose first, clapping Owen's shoulder. "Brothers outside. We'll scout some leads tomorrow. Old contacts, manifest runs." He nodded to Claire. "Your family now, Mom. Iron's word." She smiled faintly, the first real one since the fundraiser, as he slipped out to join the others. Their engines coughed to life in the driveway, a low chorus fading into the night, leaving echoes that vibrated through the walls. Owen stood carefully, easing Penny into Claire's arms. The transfer was seamless, a handoff of trust. "I'll be back at dawn," he said, grabbing his helmet from the entry table. Its scratches seemed less like wounds now, more like roads mapped for redemption. Claire walked him to the door, the porch swing swaying in the breeze. "Thank you," she whispered, her hand lingering on the frame, "for staying." As Owen mounted his Harley, the engine's growl a familiar thunder, he glanced back at the house, lights warm against the dark, a silhouette of mother and children. The road ahead twisted toward Apex's shadows, a corruption that had claimed more than one life, its roots tangled in Elmwood's underbelly. Unseen, a figure watched from a parked cruiser down the block, radio crackling with a coded alert, the biker's return stirring old files. But Owen rode into the night with purpose, the helmet's weight a vow renewed, pulling him not away, but toward the family he'd unwittingly forged. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent witnesses to the quiet war brewing. Iron Promise would ride at first light, unearthing truths buried deeper than desert graves, testing bonds that time couldn't erode. For Owen, it was more than justice. It was reclaiming the man beneath the gravel, one promise at a time. Dawn broke over Elmwood like a reluctant confession, the first rays slicing through the haze to gild the rooftops and stir the dew-kissed fields. Owen's Harley idled in the driveway of the Iron Promise clubhouse, a weathered barn on the town's fringe, its red paint chipped but the emblem bold, a fist around an oath etched in iron resolve. He'd barely slept, the night's ride replaying in loops. Claire's tentative smile, Penny's trusting wait, the siren that had trailed him like a ghost. Now, with Jax and three brothers flanking him, Rico, the wiry mechanic with grease-stained knuckles, Lena, a sharp-eyed nurse who'd patched more club wounds than hospital charts, and Tate, the quiet enforcer whose silence hid a storm. Owen felt the pull of purpose tighten like a chain. They gathered around a scarred workbench, coffee steaming in chipped mugs, the air thick with the tang of motor oil and fresh-brewed grounds. Jax unrolled a faded map, its creases worn from countless runs, marking Elmwood's veins, the interstate where the crash unfolded, Apex Freight's depot on the industrial loop, and the precinct downtown, a squat brick building hiding more than parking tickets. "Started with basics," Jax said, his finger tracing the route. "Pulled strings last night, old buddy and transport logs. Apex has been dodging weight checks for years. That rig from the pileup, overloaded by tons, tires rated for half the load. Driver's manifest was clean on paper, but whispers say it was doctored." Owen nodded, his jaw set like granite, the helmet propped beside him a silent sentinel. Its scratches caught the light, each one a mile marker on the road to this reckoning. He'd promised Claire answers, not vengeance. But the club's code blurred the line. Justice as a quiet blade, cutting through lies without spilling blood. Rico leaned in, wiping hands on his rag. "Checked the depot fence last week on a parts run. Guards slacking, but cameras everywhere. Saw manifests in the office trash, routes skipping inspections, payoffs to dough-tea boys." Lena crossed her arms, her scrubs swapped for a club vest. The fabric hugging her frame like armor, and the human cost. "I've seen the fallout in the ER, wreck victims from Apex halls, dismissed as freak accidents. Families left scraping for truth while the company's lawyers feast." The words hung heavy, stirring Owen's buried rage. That highway night replayed in flashes, the van's crumple, Mark's pinned form, the rain masking his final gasp. Owen had ridden away thinking it done, but promises didn't fade like taillights. They rusted, waiting to snag you. "We hit the precinct first," he rumbled, voice low as distant thunder. "Claire mentioned the cop who closed the file quick. If he's in Apex's pocket, that's our thread." Tate grunted agreement, his massive frame shifting, eyes like polished flint. No words needed. The brotherhood spoke in nods and shared scars, a family forged in the crucible of lost battles, vets like Owen pulling each other from the ditch. They mounted up, engines roaring to life in a symphony of defiance, the convoy cutting through morning traffic like a steel river. Elmwood's main drag stirred, shopkeepers flipping signs, kids on bikes scattering at the growl. The precinct loomed at the end, its flag limp in the still air, windows reflecting the bikes as they pulled into the lot. Owen killed his engine first, the silence amplifying the tick of cooling metal. Inside, the lobby smelled of stale coffee and bureaucracy, fluorescent buzz overhead casting harsh shadows on wanted posters and community flyers. Sergeant Hale, mid-40s with a paunch straining his uniform and eyes that darted like cornered prey, looked up from his desk. Owen approached alone, the others hanging back by the door, their presence a subtle pressure. "Need the file on the heart crash," Owen said, sliding a worn ID across. Fictitious consultant for a victims' aid group, courtesy of Jax's forgeries. 4 years back, interstate pile-up. Families reopening questions. Hale's face paled, fingers drumming the keyboard a beat too fast. Old case, closed as accident, no new leads. But his glance flicked to a back office, sweat beading on his brow. Owen leaned in, the counter's edge digging into his palms, the scent of cheap cologne clashing with his leather. Heard Apex Freight's name tied to it. Overloads, bribes. You were lead responder. Saw the rig's state firsthand. Hale stiffened, voice pitching higher. Nothing irregular. Weather did it. Department's hands are tied. But the lie cracked in his eyes, a flicker of fear. Outside, Rico's phone buzzed. A tip from a depot source. Hale's name on a payoff list. Envelopes slid under diner booths. Owen pressed, voice steady as bedrock. "Truth's a heavy load. Sergeant, carry it alone or let it lighten with the right ride." Hale bolted then, muttering about fetching the file, vanishing into the hall. Tate moved like shadow, slipping after him, while Lena monitored the lobby, her calm a veil over readiness. Minutes stretched, tension coiling like a spring. A muffled argument echoed, Hale's protests, Tate's low growl, ending in the scrape of a drawer. He emerged, file clutched white-knuckled, sliding it over. "Take it, but apex. They don't forget." Inside, the pages told the tale. Photos of the wreckage blurred by rain, reports glossing tire blowouts, a note buried deep. Driver's log altered post-crash. Witness statements vanished. Owen pocketed a photocopy Jax had prepped, the original left intact to avoid alarms. "Appreciate the cooperation," he said, turning away, the brothers filing out in sync. Bikes thrummed alive, peeling out toward the depot, wind whipping faces as Elmwood blurred past. But in the rear view, a cruiser tailed at a distance, Hale's radio no doubt crackling warnings to Apex higher-ups. The corruption's web tightened, a local judge possibly entangled, files sealed under a veil of public safety. Back at the clubhouse, they pored over the docks under the barn's rafters, sunlight slanting through cracks like judgment's rays. Claire called mid-morning, her voice a mix of worry and warmth. "Penny's asking for her angel. Found an old drawing. Your helmet exact." Owen's throat tightened, the child's faith a balm on fresh wounds. "Tell her we're mending roads. Dinner again soon." Hanging up, he traced the file's anomalies, a signature mismatch on the manifest, linking to a shell company laundering Apex payoffs. Iron Promises network hummed, contacts in trucking unions, hackers skirting edges of legality, all converging on the rot. Yet doubt gnawed at Owen, a psychological siege. Was he dragging innocence into the club's shadows? Jack sensed it, clapping his back. "Promises bind us, brother. We ride for the hearts like kin, chosen, not born." Lena nodded, her eyes fierce. "Redemption's not clean. It's gritty like gravel under boots." As afternoon waned, the plan solidified. Infiltrate the depot at dusk, snag a hard drive from the office. Risky, but the moral fire burned brighter than fear. Owen stepped outside, helmet in hand, its weight a vow. The sun dipped, casting long shadows, the air humming with impending storm. Apex's machine ground on, but Iron Promise's oath endured. Loyalty as the ultimate weapon, turning a hard man's pieces into unbreakable whole. The tale from the precinct circled closer, unseen eyes marking their path. But Owen revved the engine, resolve hardening like dawn-forged steel. Justice whispered on the wind, poetic and unyielding, pulling them toward the heart of the darkness. If this tale of quiet courage stirred your soul, smash that like button below. It fuels stories like these to reach even further. Dusk settled over the Apex freight depot like a shroud, the sky bruising purple as the sun surrendered to the horizon. Chain-link fences rattled faintly in the evening gusts, topped with barbed wire that glinted like false stars. Owen crouched in the tree line, bordering the industrial sprawl, his breath steady despite the pulse hammering in his temples. The helmet rested at his feet, a grounded anchor amid the shadows, its scratches blending with the encroaching dark. Jax flanked him to the left, Rico to the right, their forms low and deliberate, while Lena and Tate circled wide, scouts in the underbrush. The air carried the metallic tang of diesel and rust, mingled with the distant hum of idling semis, ghosts of the loads that had crushed lives under their weight. They'd parked the bikes a mile out, rolling them silent to avoid the echo of engines betraying their approach. Owen's mind replayed the file's secrets, the altered logs, the vanished witness accounts, all pointing to a network of quiet complicity. Sergeant Hale's fear at the precinct had been the crack. Now this hard drive in the office safe could shatter the facade. But doubt clawed at him, a psychological thorn, dragging his brothers into this for a family not his own, risking the club's fragile peace. Jax sensed it, his whisper cutting the tension. "We chose this road together, Gravel. For the promise, for the hearts. No turning back." Owen nodded, the words a balm, reminding him of Iron Promise's core, loyalty as the forge that mended broken men. Rico picked the fence lock with a soft click, the tool glinting in his palm like a surgeon's scalpel. They slipped through, boots crunching on gravel that muffled underfoot, the depot's floodlights casting elongated shadows across loading bays stacked with crates. Guards patrolled lazily, cigarettes glowing like fireflies, their chatter drifting on the breeze, complaints about overtime, bribes that came too slow. Owen's heart tightened. These men weren't monsters, just cogs in a machine grinding down the innocent. He thought of Claire's weary eyes over pie, Penny's drawings of a helmeted savior, symbols of a justice that demanded more than silence. They darted between trailers, the air growing thicker with the scent of tar and exhaust. The office squatted at the compound's heart, a prefab box with blinds drawn against the night. Tate signaled from the shadows, a thumbs up confirming the perimeter clear for now. Lena melted into position by the back door, her nursing kit swapped for a slim gym, tools of precision, not force. Owen's role was simple: in and out, grab the drive, vanish like smoke. But as they approached, a flicker of movement caught his eye, a figure in the window, silhouetted against the desk lamp, rifling drawers with frantic haste. "Inside," Owen breathed into his radio, the static, a faint hiss. Jax's hand gripped his shoulder, a silent vow of cover. They breached the door with a muffled pop, the lock yielding to Rico's expertise. The office smelled of stale smoke and ink, papers scattered like fallen leaves. The man inside spun, face paling under the harsh bulb, a mid-level clerk, tie askew, eyes wide with the terror of the court. "Who the hell?" he stammered, backing against the file cabinets. Owen stepped forward, his bulk filling the doorway, voice low and unyielding. "Not here to hurt, just answers. Apex's secrets, the heart crash, the overloads. Hand over the drive, and we walk quiet." The clerk's gaze darted to the safe, then to the window where Jax's shadow loomed. Sweat beaded on his brow, the room's clock ticking like a countdown. "You don't know what you're stirring. They own this town. Cops, judges. One word, and you're buried." His words hung, a moral crossroads. Complicity or confession. Owen saw the fracture, the man's own regrets mirroring his unkept promise. "I know the weight of silence," Owen said, his tone gravel soft, edged with empathy. "Rode away from a wreck once, left loose ends. Cost me years. Don't let it claim you too." The clerk hesitated, fingers trembling as he punched the safe code, the door swinging open with a pneumatic sigh. But alarms blared then, shrill and piercing, red lights pulsing like wounded hearts. The clerk froze, betrayal flashing in his eyes, perhaps a silent trigger, or bad luck. "Run!" he hissed, tossing the drive to Owen, who caught it mid-air, the plastic cool against his palm. Chaos erupted. Shouts from the yard, boots pounding pavement, the growl of a guard dog's chain snapping taut. They bolted, Rico slamming the door behind them, the group weaving through the maze of trailers like shadows fleeing dawn. Gunshots cracked the night, not aimed, warnings barking from floodlit towers, but close enough to whip the air, splintering a crate inches from Tate's heel. Owen's lungs burned as they vaulted the fence, thorns snagging leather like desperate claws. The tree lines swallowed them, branches whipping faces. The drive clutched tight in Owen's fist. A digital key to Apex's underbelly, manifests, emails, payoff trails linking Hale to the boardroom. Heart pounding, he glanced back. The depot swarmed with lights, cruisers screeching in from Elmwood's edges. The tale from the precinct had multiplied, corruption's hounds closing in. Jax pulled him deeper into cover, their breaths ragged in the undergrowth. "Got it?" Lena asked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. Owen nodded, the weight of the device heavier than iron. "For Claire." For Mark, we ride. They regrouped at the bikes, engines coughing to life in suppressed roars, the convoy melting into backroads under the moon's indifferent gaze. Elmwood's lights twinkled distant, a facade of normalcy hiding the rot. Owen's mind raced. The drive would expose it all. Falsified inspections, a judge sealing files for stock tips, lives traded for profit. But the cost loomed, a psychological siege. What if this pulled Claire and the kids into the crossfire? Penny's faith, so pure, now tethered to his shadows. Jack's rode shotgun, his headlight cutting the dark. "Brotherhood's our shield," he called over the wind. "We stand, or we fall together." Back at the clubhouse, under the barn's vaulted roof, they huddled around a laptop, the drive's files unfolding like a confession. Dates synced with the crash, overloaded manifests initialed by Hale's alias, emails to a shell firm laundering bribes. Lena's fingers flew over keys, her nurse's precision decoding the web. "This ties to 3 more wrecks," she murmured, face grim. "Families like the Harts?" Silenced. Rico patched a secure line to union contacts, the club's network humming like a well-oiled machine, chosen kin bridging gaps blood couldn't. Owen stepped out for air, the night cool against his skin. Helmet in hand, the scratches traced under his thumb felt like braille, spelling redemption's cost. Claire's voice echoed from earlier calls, warm with trust. "Penny made you a plate, lasagna this time," simple words anchoring him. But sirens wailed faint in the distance, Apex's reach extending. A burner phone buzzed. Anonymous tip. "Watch your back, the judge is calling shots." Moral tension coiled tighter, justice demanded sacrifice, testing the honor that bound iron promise. As stars pierced the canopy, Owen donned the helmet, its weight a renewed oath. The road ahead twisted darker, corruption's heart pulsing in Elmwood's core. Yet in the quiet, with brothers at his side, he felt the pieces of the hard man reassemble, not in vengeance, but in the unyielding light of promises kept. The guardian angel stayed, wings of steel ready to shield what mattered most. The clubhouse's dim bulb flickered like a faltering heartbeat, casting jagged shadows across the workbench where the laptop screen glowed with incriminating light. Owen paced the creaking floorboards, the hard drive's revelations burning in his mind, chains of emails linking Apex's executives to local power brokers, manifests doctored with surgical precision, and a ledger of payoffs that snaked through Elmwood's veins. The air hung heavy, with the scent of cooling engines and instant coffee, the night's adrenaline still buzzing in his blood like high-voltage wire. Jax hunched over the device, his brow furrowed under the lamp's harsh glare, while Lena cross-referenced names on a notepad, her pen scratching like claws on bone. Rico tinkered with a radio scanner in the corner. Static bursts hinting at police chatter closing in. Tate stood sentinel by the door, his silhouette a monolith against the night. "We've got enough to bury them," Jack said finally, leaning back with a creak of his chair, the words measured as a judge's gavel. Hale's signature on 3 bribes, the judge, Ellsworth, taking equity in Apex shells. That crash, engineered negligence, covered to protect the bottom line. Owen stopped pacing, his boots thudding to a halt, the helmet clutched in one fist like a talisman. The scratches under his thumb felt alive now, pulsing with the ghosts of roads untraveled. He'd dragged his brothers into this storm for a promise half remembered, but their eyes held no regret, only the fierce loyalty that had pulled him from his own abyss years ago, after the war's echoes left him hollow. Iron Promise wasn't just ink and iron, it was the family that chose you when blood turned cold. A knock rattled the barn door, sharp and urgent, freezing them all. Tate cracked it open, gunmetal eyes narrowing before he swung it wide. Claire stood there, wind-tossed hair framing a face pale as moonlight, Penny clinging to her leg like a shadow. Tommy fussed in a carrier on her chest, his whimpers cutting the silence. "Owen!" Claire breathed, stepping inside, the door groaning shut behind her. The sirens! They're circling my street. A cruiser parked across the road, just watching. Penny wouldn't sleep. She said her angel needed to know. The girl's wide eyes found Owen's, her small hand reaching out, fingers tracing the air as if to bridge the gap. Bad dreams came back. The monsters from the rain. Owen's chest tightened, a vice of guilt and resolve. He'd meant to shield them, not draw the shadows closer. Crossing the room in 2 strides, he knelt to Penny's level, the floor's dust motes swirling in the lamplight. "Monsters hate the light, kid," he murmured, his gravel voice softening like sand smoothed by waves. "We're turning it on 'em. You and your mom, safe here with us." Penny nodded, slipping her hand into his, the trust a fragile flame against the encroaching dark. Claire's gaze met his over the child's head, gratitude laced with fear. A spark of something deeper flickering in the quiet exchange, the raw pull of shared scars, promises bridging years. Lena moved first, guiding Claire to a cot in the back, unfolding blankets with the efficiency of someone who'd mended more than flesh. "Rest while we plan," she said, her voice a steady anchor. "These walls have held worse than stairs." Jax pulled Owen aside. The map refolded on the bench, pins marking escape routes through Elmwood's back alleys. "Apex knows we're digging. That Clark probably sang before we cleared the fence. We go public tomorrow. Leak the files to a clean reporter upstate. Let the feds chew on it. But tonight we draw the heat off the hearts." His hand clamped Owen's shoulder, the grip ironclad. "You're not riding solo anymore. Brother, this is our oath." The scanner crackled to life then, Rico twisting the dial, voices filtering through, cruisers dispatched to the clubhouse, a code for suspected intruders at the depot tying back to them. Owen's pulse quickened, the moral weight pressing like an overloaded rig. Confront the corruption head-on, or vanish into the night, leaving justice half done. He thought of Mark Hart, pinned in that van, his last words a plea carried on rain. No more loose ends. "We meet 'em halfway," Owen decided, voice low thunder. "Ride to the precinct, force Hale's hand, make him flip on the record. If Ellsworth's pulling strings, we cut 'em loose." They mobilized like a well-oiled machine, bikes wheeled out under cover of the barn's overhang, engines muffled to growls. Claire watched from the doorway, Penny tucked against her, the child's face buried in her mother's side. "Be careful," Claire whispered as Owen paused, helmet under arm, the night air crisp with pine and tension. Her hand brushed his, a fleeting warmth that anchored him more than any road. "You've already given us tomorrow, don't take it back." He nodded, the words etching deeper than tattoos, then donned the helmet, its familiar weight a vow sealed in steel. The convoy rolled out, 5 Harleys slicing through the dark like arrows loosed from a bow, headlights carving tunnels in the fog. Elmwood slept uneasy, street lamps pooling yellow on empty sidewalks, the distant wail of sirens a siren's call to confrontation. They hit the precinct's lot at speed, tires screeching to halts that echoed like challenges. Lights blazed inside, Hale's silhouette pacing the lobby, phone pressed to his ear. Tate and Rico flanked the doors, Lena covering the rear, while Owen and Jax strode in, the bells jingle a mocking chime. Hale spun, face ashen, the receiver clattering down. "You idiots, get out! Apex'll crush you!" Owen loomed over the desk, the file photocopies slapping down like accusations. "Or you flip, Sergeant. Testify. Hand over the originals. We got the drive. Your name's all over it." Hale's eyes darted, sweat slicking his collar, the room's clock ticking a frantic rhythm. Outside, cruisers pulled up, lights flashing blue and red, bathing the walls in pulsing chaos. A standoff brewed, moral lines blurring under pressure. Hale's complicity, a chain he could break or tighten around his neck. Jax's voice cut through, calm as desert wind. "Choose your legacy, man. Silence buries you with the wrecks." Hale crumpled then, hands trembling as he keyed the mic, calling off the response with a fabricated all clear. Ellsworth, he's the key. Meets Apex Suits at the old mill tomorrow. Noon. Takes his cut in cash. The confession spilled like oil from a cracked tank, recorded on Lena's hidden phone, the digital noose tightening. But as they backed out, engines revving in unison, a shot rang out, wild from a shadowed cruiser, grazing Jax's mirror in a spark of metal. The convoy scattered, weaving through alleys slick with dew, the bullets echo, a grim promise of escalation. Owen glanced back. Penny's drawing tucked in his vest, a helmeted angel, wings spread wide. The hard man's pieces shattered further under the strain, but in the roar of the road, with brothers at his flanks and Claire's faith pulling like gravity, he rode toward dawn's judgment. Apex's web frayed, but its spider stirred. The final stand looming at the mill, a clash of shadows, where promises would forge or break the unyielding bond of chosen kin. The wind whipped cold, carrying whispers of redemption's price, as iron promise thundered on, guardians in the gathering storm. The old mill loomed on Elmwood's forgotten edge, a skeletal relic of rusted beams and crumbling brick, where the river churned black under the midday sun. Shadows pooled in its eaves like spilled ink, the air thick with the damp rot of moss and forgotten industry. Owen's Harley idled at the tree line, engine's low thrum vibrating through his bones, the helmet strapped to the handlebar, catching glints of light like a watchful eye. Jax pulled up beside him, dust settling on their vests, while Rico, Lena, and Tate fanned out, positioning bikes as barriers in the undergrowth. The drive's secrets burned in Owen's pocket, a USB talisman heavy with truths that could topple empires built on lies. Claire and Penny waited back at the clubhouse, under Lena's earlier watch, the child's drawings now pinned like battle flags. Owen had called before riding out, his voice rough over the line, "Stay put. This ends today." Penny's sleepy reply echoed in his mind, "Angels win, right?" A child's unshakable faith that chipped at his armored resolve. The hard man, pieced together from gravel and ghosts, felt the fractures deepen. This wasn't just for the hearts anymore. It was for every promise the roads had stolen, every loose end frayed by time's relentless pull. Scouts confirmed it. Ellsworth's sedan had arrived 10 minutes prior, sleek and out of place amid the mill's decay, parked by the loading dock. 2 Apex Suits flanked him, crisp shirts hiding paunches earned from boardroom deals, briefcases clutched like shields. Hale's confession had lit the fuse. The judge, sensing the noose, had moved the meat early. But Iron Promise's network, whispers from union eyes and a hacker's back door, had tracked them. No guns drawn. The club's code favored truth's blade over lead. Owen dismounted, boots crunching gravel, the scent of wet stone and engine oil grounding him. "We walk in open," he murmured to Jax, who nodded, his eagle tattoo flexing like a promise of vigilance. They advanced as a unit, shadows lengthening across the cracked concrete, the river's murmur a tense underscore. Ellsworth spotted them first, his face draining to chalk under the brim of a fedora, the suits shifting uneasily. "Bikers!" he spat, voice echoing off the walls, laced with the false authority of a man whose robes hid stains. "This is private property. Leave, or I'll have you arrested." Owen stepped forward, the group halting 10 paces out, the wind tugging at his vest like insistent fingers. The helmet remained on the bike, a symbol left behind, not for flight but to claim this ground as his own. "We're here for the hearts," Owen rumbled, pulling the drive from his pocket, holding it aloft like evidence in a courtroom of ruins. "And every family apex buried under your weight. Overloads, bribes, covered wrecks. We have the files, manifests, your emails, Hale's flip-on tape." The judge's eyes widened, a flicker of panic betraying the facade, while the suits exchanged glances, hands inching toward concealed pieces. Jax's presence loomed steady, a wall of chosen kin, reminding Owen of nights in the desert, brothers sharing canteens under stars that judged no one. Ellsworth laughed, brittle as dry leaves. Proof means nothing without teeth. This town's mine, cops, codes, all greased. Walk away or join the accidents. But his voice cracked, the moral ground shifting beneath him like the mill's unstable foundation. Owen felt the psychological pull, the temptation to unleash the storm inside, the hard man's rage forged in war and loss. Instead, he thought of Penny's hand in his, Claire's brush of fingers on the porch, the quiet dinner where promises had thawed his silence. "We ain't here to fight," he said, voice gravel steady. "Just to end the lies. Turn yourself in, hand over the ledgers. Justice ain't vengeance. It's standing for what's right when the easy road calls." Tension coiled, the river's rush amplifying heartbeats. One suit lunged, desperation cracking his poise, but Tate moved like thunder, pinning him with a forearm that brooked no argument, no blows, just restraint born of precision. Lena stepped in, her voice cutting sharp. "Think of the lives, mangled metal, silenced families. Your greed wrote their ends." The other suit froze, briefcase dropping with a thud, papers spilling like confessions. Ellsworth sagged against a beam, the weight of exposure crumbling his empire. "It's over," he muttered, pulling a phone with trembling hands, dialing the state attorney, a clean line untainted by local rot. "Send a team, full disclosure, all of it." Sirens wailed distant, converging not as hunters but harbingers of unraveling. Federal badges would follow, the drive's data-seeding indictments that would echo beyond Elmwood. Owen watched the judges fall, not with triumph, but a quiet poetry, the corrupt unmasked by loyalty's unyielding light. No blood spilled, only truths unearthed. Justice as a slow dawn breaking corruption's night. As agents swarmed the mill, cuffing the suits and Mirandizing Ellsworth, Owen retreated to his bike. The helmet's scratches, now badges of battles won through staying, not fleeing. Jax clapped his back, the Brotherhood's bond a silent roar. "You held the line, brother. Promise kept." They rode out in formation, the convoy a steel river cutting back to town, wind cleansing the air of tension. Elmwood streets welcomed them with afternoon hush, the clubhouse's barn door swinging open to Claire's anxious face. Penny raced out, arms wide, colliding with Owen's legs as he dismounted. "You won! No more monsters!" Claire followed, Tommy on her hip, her eyes meeting Owen's with a depth that spoke volumes. Gratitude, connection, the spark of futures unwritten. He knelt, pulling Penny close, the child's laughter a melody against the river's echo in his memory. "Angels stay when they choose to," he said softly, the words sealing his redemption, the hard man's pieces forged into wholeness by family chosen. In the weeks that followed, Apex crumbled, executives paraded in chains, settlements flowing to victims like rain after drought. Hale testified, his silence shattered, earning a reduced sentence for the light he shed. Owen visited the hearts often, dinners evolving into shared rides, Penny's drawings adorning his saddlebags. The helmet hung in Claire's hall now, a symbol not of ghosts, but of responsibility embraced. Promises that survived the roads. Iron Promise rode on, guardians of quiet honor, their oath a beacon in a cynical world. Owen, once gravel adrift, found his anchor, not in thunder but in the steady hum of lives intertwined, redemption's legacy etched in every mile. Thank you for riding this journey with us to the end. If these tales of unbreakable promises touched your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got more stories of courage and chosen family coming your way. Until next time, keep your word and watch the road ahead.